How are you, Shirley? Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. And yes, doing pretty well. Doing pretty well as well. Today is Friday, right? And we
Yeah.
have here let's say this I don't know how to as I told you, I don't have any word for it, but let's say it's civic reunion. And of course, because I'm working, I'm not able to assist, but I would have loved actually to go, but I have to work as well, and they didn't tell us anything. So I guess it's it's what you have to do sometimes, right? But what about you?
You don't went to Cabildo?
No, I'm not able to. I would like to, but I'm not able because it starts in the night. So given that it starts at night, and I work
Mhm.
until I don't know 10 p.m. or sometimes more, I'm not going to be able to. But I would have loved to. But well, I mean, I guess that one more, one less, it's not that much, right? Because as I was seeing some pictures some minutes ago in on the social media, there are a lot of people there. I mean, it has not even started and it is already full of people. So I guess that let's say half of Santa Cruz is going to be there tonight. So it's not really important if I go or if I don't.
Yeah. I know.
What about you?
Um, yeah, this is today was so busy. I was working in laboratory all day. So
Mhm.
yeah.
All right, very good. The routine, I guess, right? But anyways, there is always a manner to give a little bit of I don't know brightness and magic to the routine as well, right? Anyways, I guess it's part of being an adult, right? To have very routinary days and things of that sort. But that's the reason why weekends exist, right? Because you can go out at least on that time with your friends and things of that sort. So are
Yeah.
you planning to have a travel or trip tomorrow with your friends as you did last week or not?
No, I don't have a specific plan for tomorrow.
Hmm. You're just gonna see and wait whatever happens, whatever the wind takes you.
Mm, no, probably I need to choose. I need to buy uh uh how did you I don't remember the specific name. Uh mm, como sacos campera.
Hmm. Like a storm breakers for the rain.
Yeah, probably I going to a store for that because
Hmm.
today and that week that's a small cold. I don't have cold.
All
Yeah.
right. Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
where are you going to purchase that? Have you thought about any particular store? I don't know, Nike, Adidas, or where would you like to buy it?
I think this is Burlington. That's the store, Burlington. I don't remember exactly the name, but that is Burlington. That is for 40 minutes
Uh-huh.
here. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not near, that's fair, but
Hmm.
this is
Yes.
like the shopping, there are different stories. Yeah, but
Yes.
this is the story
Hmm.
more big.
Oh, interesting. But it's not a how's this called? It's not a brand as such, all right? For example, as Nike or Adidas or things of that sort. It's a store, just on a store, right? That maybe sells different brands, right? Like any
Yeah,
sport brand. Is that true? Or it's
yeah,
like
that's
I don't
right.
know, a brand as such? Or is that a store? It's in a store. Okay, very interesting. I had never heard about it. Um, when I was in the US, I didn't actually visit many stores as such. I just went to the most famous ones and to the Apple store as well. And I went
Mm.
to a supermarket that was called Costco. There are
Oh, Costco,
Costco's
yeah.
in
Yeah,
there are
I know.
Costco's in yes,
I went the last week. Yeah.
yes.
I I I I I
Hmm.
bought my computer. I had the new computer. I don't know that's word, but yeah.
Oh yes, fantastic. So you bought it.
Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
one did you choose?
Yeah, that's new. So this is like I correct 7, around 16,
Oh,
16,
fantastic. Uh-huh.
and one the memory they had 1 terabyte.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Oh, fantastic. A very good computer then. I see
yeah,
you follow the recommendations that I gave you. Very good
yeah,
characteristics your computer has.
I don't know this as well, but my screen is toast, so that's well.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, very good, very good. Yes, certainly good. I mean, of course, it's more sensitive. Maybe you have to be very careful with it because any
Yeah,
particular,
sí, yeah.
strike or things or something like that, it's gonna cause a lot of damage. But nonetheless, I guess that for you or maybe your career, that is useful. I'm not sure if it is something that you were looking for, but anyways, of course, if you take care of it, as I'm sure you will be, as I'm sure you will, it is fine. It's not gonna cause any particular problem. I think so. Yes, certainly. And what brands it is? Lenovo, Asus,
This is Lenovo.
Lenovo?
Yeah, this is
Oh,
Lenovo.
yes. Very, very good then. It's a very good
Yeah.
brand, as I told you. A very good brand, and especially the characteristics you mentioned. I think that if you take care of the computer very much, then the computer is going to be helping you and working for you for a lot of years. I don't know, maybe 10 years if you take care of it very good.
I thought
Easily.
that.
Easily. Yes, yes, certainly.
Yeah, they have problem. I at this moment this computer don't have the access for check memory or don't
Mhm.
have access for the HDMI. So
Yes.
I need a adapter external, yeah,
The external.
external, yeah.
But not for the
Because
new one, right? For the old one, the one that you're using right now. Or
no,
for the new one,
the new don't have that.
the new one doesn't have like all those
Yeah,
characteristics you mentioned, like the
yeah.
HDMI cable doesn't have it.
That's weird, but don't have access for that. Only
Oh, quite weird.
USB and how do you say auriculares? The beats?
Headphones, headphones,
Earphones.
hmm
Yes. Okay,
headphones.
yeah.
Yes.
They have access for I don't know exactly the USB and NFC for the charging
hmm
and another. Yeah, but
Okay.
I need to buy another adapter. Yeah, for that.
Yes. Yes. Okay, weird, right? I didn't know that Lenovo computers didn't have those very common characteristics. I guess it's something, I don't know, something common in the
Probably
US.
is
I don't know.
for the size. The this computer I have that is 14 pounds inch.
Inches? Yes, 14 inches.
Yeah, inches. Yeah, 14
hmm
inches.
14
I
inches.
think
All right.
the 15.6 they have. So this no.
It's
This
very
is
small, the one that you
yeah.
bought. No, but anyways, it's good, right? It also has it also has its advantages because when you have small computers, you can actually save it more easily, right? And
Yeah,
it
I like
fits
it,
very well
the
in
design.
your school bag. Yes,
Yeah, I like it. My last computer is the same size.
the
It is
same
just
size.
more easy. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, yes, I mean certainly, and especially I guess for your career, you don't actually need to have a very large screen, right? Because well,
Yeah.
you're not gonna use it for designing things like I don't know, as in marketing, for example, or graphic design, they use the computer in order to create draws and to make paintings. So of course they need to have a very, very large visual camp, right? But nonetheless, in your case, you're just gonna be working with programs, I guess, and systems that allow you to check out the chemistry elements, right?
Yeah. Usually when I have the more work or I need a more screen, I need to connect another screen. I can so in my home in Bolivia, I had that. In my laboratory, I had another screen.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
yes, yes. Very good. Very good as well. That is another alternative, as you mentioned it. And yeah, certainly that is and that is what having these connectors in your computer, these ports allow you to do, right? Because when you have
Yeah.
this USB or any other type of adapters, then you're able to transmit your screen into different devices, right? Televisions, another screens. Fantastic, and that is great. Yeah, you're right. I think that's a way to solve the problem, and especially in your career, as you say, because I guess that when you wanted to use a bigger screen, it was because you wanted to make a presentation or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yes. Yeah, right. Certainly, because when, for example, when you're working in systems, you actually, well, in my opinion, you actually need a very big screen because you need to code a lot of things, right? To program stuff. So when you are programming stuff, you need a lot of space on your screen, in my opinion, because there are a lot of letters and symbols, very abstract things that excuse me, that go on in your computer. So as you are going to be needing that, I think that a bigger screen is necessary. But for yours, fantastic. I think it was a very good choice, truly.
Yeah, thanks.
Very good then. So what else? Also, yes, as I told you, this is a class in which we're going to discuss the speaking section of the TOEFL exam. So let me now starting with that. Oh, but I also wanted to ask you, I was listening about some sort of a storm, very powerful, that was going through the east coast of the U.S. Did that affect the state you're living in right now? That is to say, Maryland. Did that affect it, or it was just in the very east coast, like for example, Florida and places like that? Or did you also feel something in your weather? Do you think it has something to do with your actual climate?
For the store, the
Yes.
I don't know, is correct. I remember young.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, here that we don't have problem with us. I see that in Florida, but here no, this is the same. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yes, because it was well, it is on all the news, right? That people are suffering very much in Florida, and yeah, it's well, especially for Latin American people, it's a state that is well filled with Latin American people, right? I mean, a lot of Latinos living in Florida, so that is the
Yeah.
reason, I guess, why the news have acquired very much concern about that particular situation. They are spreading that information throughout the subcontinent of Latin America. But very good, very good. If it is not affecting you, fantastic. I was concerned and wondering if you were fine because of this storm. But great, if you're fine, I guess. But because you also told me that there were some changes in the climate that you
Yeah.
have perceived, and I guess it has some sort of relationship, right, with this storm. Although of course not that powerful or not that much devastating, but anyways, it is affecting somehow the general climate, right? At least in the East Coast.
Yeah. Today that this way is more cold in raining. So that's the difference.
Yes. Well, fantastic, but very good then. So I hope that it doesn't reach other places, right? The storm, but very good. Okay, thank you very much then, Shirley. So as I was mentioning, let us start today the with the activity that we have signaled for today's class, and we have actually a very interesting class ahead of us. So let us start right now. Let me open this. As I told you yesterday, we are going to be discussing in these last classes the speaking section, all right? And I'm going to be preparing you for the first task of the speaking section, that is, as I told you, the most difficult one, and also the one that could allow you, in my opinion, to improve a little bit also your day-to-day speaking, because the other tasks in the speaking section are more, let's say, academic. They discuss academic topics and they require you to improve your academic English. And of course, you're going to do so whenever you want to take the TOEFL exam. But given that you're not going to take it immediately, you have time in order to do so. But this particular task can help you not only to improve your English for the TOEFL exam and to know what to do when you take it, but you can also actually improve and have some learning for your daily English as well. So let us start with this. I explained you this yesterday, right? That the independent question or the independent task is called like that because you are going to depend on your own information, ideas, and your own criteria in order to respond. And that in this question, the only thing you're going to do, just as you did in the second task of the writing section, is to share your opinion. That is to say, you are going to be delivering your opinion about a topic that ETS gives you, and then you're going to defend that particular topic. That is it. Okay. You're not going to do anything else. What else? Very important, you have little time, as you can see, 15 seconds to prepare a response and 45 seconds to speak. And that is the difficult part. Okay, so I told you yesterday that I wanted to show you some examples. So let us get into that particular exercise. Okay, I want to show you some examples of responses that I have given. And I think that you're going to be able to appreciate better the technique to respond to this type of questions and also what you have to do, right, in general levels. So let me, okay, here you are.
Yeah,
Okay,
this part,
fantastic.
the speaking, they have the two tasks. The first is your opinion. In the second,
No,
what
it's just one. It's just one task.
Is you was
I mean,
okay. I didn't.
yes.
I was thinking
No.
that two.
Yes, no, it's just one. I mean, the task implies with it that you're going to give your opinion and you're going to defend it at the same time. That is to say, when you finish your opinion in the 45 seconds, in the same 45 seconds, you will also have to defend it. Okay, it's not like broken or divided into two different responses or parts. It's just one response of 45 seconds in which you deliver the response, giving your opinion and also defending it. Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. So let us see this example that I have for you. For example, let us read this together. It says, some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society. Others are of the opinion that a person's career is their most important task in life. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? All right, so please look at this, dear Shirley. This would be, let's say, a representation of a possible topic you could receive on the exam, because as I told you, the only thing ETS gives you for this task is a topic or a statement for you to discuss in the response. In this case, the topic is, some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society, and others believe that your career is the most important thing you can do for society. So which of these particular positions you consider to be true or you are agreeing with? So in this case, well, as I mentioned, you have to choose a particular position. You have to take one side. In your response, you're going to express your opinion, basically reuniting yourself with that side and then also defending it. So let me show you an example, okay, of how I responded to this question, okay? So let me open this, and here I have the example. All right, so imagine that my 15 seconds of preparation have already passed, because as I told you, you have to first of all prepare the response in 15 seconds. After you finalize with 15 seconds of preparation, then is when you have to respond, okay? In 4 or 5 seconds, as we have discussed. So imagine that I have prepared my response, that I have outlined everything I'm gonna say, etc., etc. So let us listen to my response, and please try to pay attention to how I start my response and also the structure, because later we're going to listen to one more example, to one more illustration, and after we have listened to these different instances, then we are gonna share, or I'm gonna share with you the template that I'm using, and then we're gonna practice together, okay? But first of all, let us get into the instances, all right? So please, let us listen to this recording that shows how I would respond to this question. So let us remember what is the topic. Some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society. Others are of the opinion that a person's career is their most important task in life. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? Okay, so let's see what I responded and how I responded, more importantly. Let's see. Okay, with regard to the topic, I believe that a person's career is the most important task in life. I believe this way because of the following reasons. First of all, children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. Maybe they turn out to be criminals. For example, I had an uncle who had a child that got into drugs and began stealing things. Secondly, if you're really good at your profession, you can come off with a revolutionary idea to positively affect people's life. As I want, for example, to be able to enact a law to allow people to create enterprises with very low taxes to improve their quality of life. There you are. Fantastic. So as you can see there, surely that would be my response. Now, if you listen to it, in this case, I was defending the position that actually is your career, what is the most beneficial, or let's say, well, important thing that you can do for society, right? Your greatest contribution to society. Now, let us then discuss this a little bit farther. So if you notice, what I did, as I told you, was to express my opinion at the beginning of my response, and then the rest I used it in order to defend it. I presented, just as we did in the second task of the speaking of the writing section, two arguments and two illustrations. First argument, illustration for that first argument, second argument, and illustration for that second argument. Okay. In this case, as I told you, the only thing that, of course, varies a little bit is that you are not writing your response, but you're speaking your response, right? Now, let us see one more example. In this case, the statement says, some people think that the criminal justice system should exist to punish wrongdoing, whereas others believe it should be used to prevent people from reoffending after their sentence is over. Which opinion do you find more persuasive, right? So as you can see, this is a more complex topic. It is more insightful because, of course, it necessarily implies that you have to think about what you're going to respond in a very philosophical sense, because this is related to laws, to sociology, and it's difficult to relate this topic with a personal idea. Nonetheless, the topic or the structure remains. You're going to see that what I do is I give my opinion, I offer an argument, and then I offer an illustration that is personal and specific for illustrating that argument. Okay, so even if you receive this type of topics, as I said, the structure remains. Even this insightful and very demanding topics and challenging topics require you to follow the template. Okay, so let us see what the topic says one more time before we respond, or before I show you my response to this particular question. Okay, so it says, some people think that the criminal justice system should exist to punish wrongdoing, whereas others believe it should be used to prevent people from reoffending after their sentence is over. Which opinion do you find more persuasive, right? Let's see how I responded. Okay, with regard to the topic, I believe that justice systems should exist to punish wrongdoings. I believe this way because of the following reasons. First of all, because it is fairer to punish people with retributive justice, that is, to punish what they have done. For example, I saw yesterday a man who had raped a poor girl. He must be punished because he committed such atrocity and not otherwise. Secondly, because if you punish people very severely for what they did, you disencourage them to do it again. For example, I know of a politician that did not embezzle again of his authority after he got in jail. There you are. Fantastic. So as you can see, one more time, I repeated the structure that I used in the first response that I show you. Now, if you pay attention to both examples and instances, what I did was, as I told you, I used the beginning of my response in order to deliver my opinion. And once I mention it very clearly and concisely, I move on to offer one argument for, well, defending and sustaining my position. Then I offered one illustration for defending and illustrating that particular argument. I move on to a second argument that is also very brief and concise. If you notice, my arguments are always brief and concise. I never expand nor comment very much on my arguments. I use my illustrations in order to explain and comment further on my arguments. That is to say, I never talked about very much in the arguments themselves, or I never expand very much. I don't explain further. If you notice, I use my illustrations in order to make my arguments understandable. All right. So that is a very important trait you should be paying attention to, because what many of my students do when we are practicing this together, and I'm going to see what you do later, is that they try to explain their arguments very much. For example, if you pay attention to my first argument in this case was that, my second argument was that systems or justice systems should be used in order to punish people for what they have done, because if you punish them, you disencourage them to do it again, right? That was my second argument. So if you notice, that was all. I didn't mention or expand more on that argument. I didn't continue explaining my argument. I jumped directly to the illustration. But what many of my students do is, for example, they explain their arguments further. They say, or they would say something like, my second argument is that If you punish people for what they have done, you disencourage them to do it again. This demonstrates that the justice systems should actually be used in order to punish just criminals and not people who could be supposed to be criminals. So as you could see, that is a response that is expanding on the argument, right? And then they would jump to the illustration, but that is erroneous. As I say, the arguments must be super concise and clear, because it is the illustration what clarifies the arguments. You don't need to expand more on the arguments. This is a common practice we have, especially in South America, that we always try to make ourselves understandable through more explanation and not through illustrations, right? That is the reason why I think at the end we are asking for illustrations, right? Instead of asking for illustrations at the beginning, because it is, I think, through illustrations that you get the idea, right? Not through more and more theoretical explanation. So as I say, refrain yourself from explaining your arguments very much and try to give them super concisely and super directly, and use the illustrations in order to explain them further. Use the illustrations to make them understandable, okay? Now, let us see the structure. If you notice, this is what I was always saying in my responses, and this is the structure I was using. The first thing I always said, as you can see, for example, in this case, the structure has 4 different steps. My first step that I always followed was saying, with regard to the topic, that was my introductory clause or my introductory sentence, if you notice, with regard to the topic. And I always use this in order to preface my response. Now, most of the takers, what they do is they say something like, in my opinion, and that is how they preface or introduce their topic. And as I said, in the TOEFL exam, what you have to do in order to receive a high score, that is to say higher than the average, you have to stand out from the rest, right? You shouldn't want to be an average test taker, because as I say, average test takers always receive the same grades, 70, 75, things of that sort. But somebody who gets out of that group and receives high qualifications above 100 are people who, as I say, are original. They follow different patterns. And in this case, this introductory phrase is different. This is the introductory phrase that I always use when I took the exam, and it works very well, okay? But anyways, you can obviously change the wording if you want. So with regard to the topic, and then I mentioned my opinion. If you notice, that was the second thing I did, right? And this also belongs to the first step. With regard to the topic, and here is where your opinion comes. For example, with regard to the topic, I consider that justice systems should be used in order to punish wrongdoings. That's it. As you can see, that is my opinion. Or commenting on the first illustration that I show you, it would be, with regard to the topic, I believe that your career is the greatest contribution you can make to society. That's it. As you can see, I'm not also explaining my opinion very much, because many of my students, when we are practicing, instead of giving a very short and concise opinion, they expand a lot on that opinion. For example, they could say something like, with regard to the topic, I believe that your career is the greatest contribution you can make to society, depending as well if you're a good professional or not, or depending also on the education you have received. As you can see, all that addition is unnecessary, because it's actually making my opinion unclear. It's helping to confuse people. So as I say, when you're giving your opinion and giving your arguments, be concise and direct, because that is how you are going to attain clearness in your argument and your response overall, and how you're also going to have time to develop your illustrations more. And let me tell you, as I told you in the writing section as well, the illustrations here are the soul of the response. It is through the illustrations that your response feels vivid, alive. And it's through the illustrations that you're going to be compelling and convince your reviewer to give you a good score. Okay, so remember, the illustrations are everything, and the arguments are merely there for directing and guiding the response. All right. So with regard to the topic, and then you give your opinion. After you mention your opinion, you move on to the second step. The second step is probably something that is super familiar to you, because it's a transition phrase, just as the one that we used in the writing section. You remember when we finished our introduction, we used a transition phrase. And that transition phrase is always similar, because of the following reasons, because of this motives, because of this, I don't know, arguments, things of that sort. So it would be until the second step. With regard to the topic, I believe that your career is the greatest contribution you can make to society. I believe this way because of the following reasons. So as you can see, I'm giving my first step and my second step, right? So after you finish those two steps that are super simple and well, in my opinion, are very easy to follow, you're going to move on to the body and the most important part of the response, of course, the arguments and illustrations. We have commented already on the arguments. They have to be super clear and concise. Okay, for example, in the first illustration, I said, right, children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. That was my first argument for saying that your career is the most important contribution you can make to society. Now, if you notice, my argument is super short and concise, right? I say, first of all, children are not always a positive addition to the world. That's it. That's my argument. And then I moved to the illustration. For example, my uncle had a child who got into drugs and began stealing things, right? As you can see, I'm demonstrating that what? That in my own family, or by the way, this is false, all right? But as I told you, you can make these illustrations up. You cannot, or you should not be compelled to always say something that is true, especially because in many cases, you cannot actually find something that is true. It's difficult to find just in 15 seconds illustrations that are super personal for every single topic they give you. So as I say, make them up, it's preferable. So because of the following reasons, I gave my arguments and I mentioned this illustration. Now, let us comment on the illustration. If you remember, the illustrations must be very personal and very specific. That is how you make your response, as I say, to stand out from the rest, to make it vivid, and you convince the reviewer that this argument applies to your life and is a good argument. Remember, you are debating. It's as if you were debating and try to convince the reviewer, who is the audience or the public in this case. So remember, okay, always giving very personal and specific illustrations, because if you don't do so, your response is not going to be compelling. It's not going to be powerful, okay? Here's where you have to spend more time, giving the illustration. Then, after you finish the first argument and the illustration that exemplifies that argument very personally and specifically, you move on to a second argument and illustration. In the first instance that I show you, my second argument was that if you are very good at your profession, you can help people to improve their quality of life, right? That is my second argument for the first instance that I show you. And then I offer, as you could see, my argument was super concise and direct again. And then I move on to my illustration directly without expanding more. I said, right, I'm studying laws right now, and in the future, I want to be able to create a law that helps people to fund enterprises and companies without paying taxes. That's it. I'm demonstrating through my own life that it is possible to be a great contribution to society by the knowledge you acquire in your profession, helping people in this particular manner, creating laws, helping them to create enterprises, companies without paying taxes. So as you can see, my illustration is very specific and very personal, right? So please, this is the structure. Do you have any question, dear Shirley?
Yeah.
Tell me.
The theory, the form, that is like you present your example, okay? But do you need a conclusion, or do you need the structure for finish the speaking?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Well, actually, you don't have to include any conclusion in this response. Let me tell you why. I think that, as we discussed also in the writing section, conclusions normally and commonly are repetitive statements. That is to say, if you include a normal conclusion, you will be basically repeating what you already said. You would say something like, in conclusion, I have said that I disagree with this because of this reason and this reason. And then you close the response, right? So as I told you, I think that in repetition, there is nothing positive to punctuate. That is to say, the reviewer is not actually going to find anything good to add to your response, because you're just repeating. You're merely repeating what you already said. You're not adding anything new. You're not being innovative, etc. So the second reason why I don't recommend you to use conclusions here, apart from this reason, is because remember, you just have 45 seconds. So of course, you would like to employ your time in those parts of the response that are more important, as the arguments and illustrations are. Of course, sometimes when you get very good at this question, you have almost 10 seconds that you don't use, because I had some students yesterday, because we are actually talking about this topic on my classes with my other students at night. And one of my students got super proficient at this task. And she basically is able to respond effectively and wonderfully in 35 seconds. So she basically has 10 remaining seconds that she doesn't use. Because as I told you, it's not actually necessary to use the entire 45 seconds to give a perfect response. A perfect response is, as I told you, a response that is clear, that is personal, and that is specific. And she got super good at this particular task that she's not even required by herself to use the entireness of the time. She merely uses 35 seconds, sometimes 40. So she has this remaining time that she doesn't use. Even when that is the case, I recommended her, please don't say a conclusion, because imagine what happens. Maybe you say a conclusion and you fail in grammar just because you're repeating something, and your perfect response is not going to be scored that way, right? So something to avoid, I would say, conclusion, but of course, it is up to you, and you can include it if you believe that the response is empty without it, okay?
Okay.
Any
Okay.
other question? Tell me.
Yeah, there are a specific number for the word that you need in 5 minutes. Oh,
Mhm.
no, because there sometimes another people speak very fast or other is slowly, but
Yes.
don't matter that.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Mm.
matter if you speak, let's say, a very small quantity of words, as far as those words, as I told you, are effective and are concise and clear. Actually, if you notice, every single one of my recommendations with regard to the arguments and with regard to the illustrations were about reducing your quantity of words, right? Because I told you, please don't expand, just be clear, concise in your arguments and develop more in illustrations. So I would say that actually a good response is one that doesn't contain a lot of words, but even when that is the case, allows to convey the topic and the opinion effectively through very good arguments that are clear and through very personal illustrations and examples. So as I said here, Shirley, don't worry about the quantity of words as far as you are delivering very clear and concise arguments and you are presenting very personal and specific illustrations. If that is the case, the quantity of words is completely relevant. Of course, if you are not actually following the template, maybe the reviewer is going to notice that there are some, or that you're not using enough words in order to respond to a question. But when you present a response this way, it's certainly something that goes down to the let's say to the criteria to evaluate their response. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. So any other question, any other thing that I could clarify about the structure?
I didn't for only for the clarifying that in the first topic or in the first point here. Do you need the specific explain what is the position in that topic? That's right.
Yes, exactly. In
Okay.
the first step, when you finish saying with regard to the topic, that is the introductory phrase, merely is, as I say, a method to introduce and to preface your response. Once you finalize with that sentence, that is the time for you to express what you think. And as I say, your opinion should not actually contain very large explanations or large statements, but your opinion should be very concise and direct. If I were to express it in Spanish, it would be directo al grano, something super clear, super concise, direct. Okay. If you give an opinion like that, following that criteria, you're going to be able to spend the rest of your time and the majority of the 4 or 5 seconds you got for responding in the important part of the response, that is the body, the arguments and the illustrations.
You don't need to repeat the topic.
Oh no,
No,
it's not
like
necessary.
with regard to the topic, I think that's a respect.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. For example, if you notice, the topic for the first illustration I gave, right, was this one. Some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society. Others are of the opinion that a person's career is their most important task in life. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? Now, in my response, what was my opinion? My opinion was, with regard to the topic, I think that the greatest contribution you can make for society is your career. That was it. If you notice, I didn't mention the other possibility, right? I didn't say something like raising children is not the most beneficial thing a person can do for society, but actually your career is the most important thing you can do for people, right? I didn't give that enormous response and large response because it's not necessary to describe the entire topic. You should actually concentrate in your own opinion because, of course, the reviewer who's going to evaluate your response knows what is the topic. So it would be, of course, completely irrational to repeat the topic when you know that the person who's going to listen to your response actually knows the topic, basically, let's say, well, basically has memorized the topic already, right? So the only thing he cares about is what you think about the topic, not to know the topic or to learn the topic, because he knows it already and he has memorized it, and maybe he was the one that proposed the topic, so he doesn't need a clarification about the topic, but to receive your particular opinion of it and your particular defense of the topic, right?
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Fantastic. There you are. Okay, so I think that having clarified all that, let us start with the practices then. But maybe just a few other recommendations before we do that. Let us listen to this. This is very important. There's no right or wrong position, as I told you, okay, to choose in this task. When you must decide what position to take on every statement, you may want to think which side you can defend more easily. As I told you, you should actually choose the one or choose the position that you, when you think about it, you know that it will be easy to defend for you. Because sometimes, for example, it happens that when we read the topic, we actually think about it and we say, okay, although in my actual life, let's say you agree with something, you are not that much prepared to give good arguments for that position. But for some reason, you are somebody who can think about different and many arguments for defending the position that in the actual life, in your real life, you disagree with. But nonetheless, in the response, you go for the positive position, that is to say, as if you were agreeing with the response. And why would you do that? Well, because as I say, you find that particular position easy to defend. And that is good. As I say, go for the one that is easy to defend, when you read it, you say, okay, I can think about different reasons for defending this one and different illustrations for exemplifying my arguments. Don't go for the one that you consider, okay, but this is true, I need to say it. No, I mean, as I say, there is no right or wrong response. They are not going to punish you for choosing the position. What they want is how can you defend it, okay? And so if you go for a position, it's fine. You can choose any of them. There is no like an evil response that you shouldn't pick, or there is no like an obligatory response that you should pick yes or yes. For example, imagine that the question is about, let's say, homosexuality, but you are somebody that knows that in the US, homosexuality is so super valid and people actually support very much homosexual relationships. Fantastic. But even if you actually think that defending the contrary position against homosexuality is easier, you should go for that one, because like I say, they don't care about right or wrong responses that are politically correct. They care about how can you defend the position, okay? So as I say, go for the one that you consider to be easy to respond for you. Maybe that is not your actual position, as I say, on the topic, but if you know that you can come up with good arguments for that side more rapidly, you should prefer it, okay? So second, once you have chosen the position and you have begun to deliver your response, you must treat the response you chose as the correct one. And what do I mean by this? Avoid hesitations, avoid doubts in your response in order to transmit security to your reviewer. Avoid all type of expressions or phrases like, for example, maybe, or I guess, probably, things of that sort. Instead of saying, for example, I guess that this is true, you should say, this is true. Or something like, perhaps this could happen. You could say, this will happen, or this is going to happen in your responses, because as I say, always speak in a very indicative mood. Indicative mood is basically when you speak, as we have seen, right? When you speak affirming instead of doubting. Subjunctive mood is when you are doubting, you are not sure of something, and you speak with maybe, perhaps, probably, things of that sort. So avoid those type of subjunctive expressions in your response. Try to go for the indicative ones, that is to say, the ones that express affirmations, facts, because if you speak that way, you're going to be demonstrating confidence. And remember, you're trying to convince your reviewer that the position you chose is the correct one. So if you are not even sure that your position is true, it's very difficult to see how you're going to be able to convince another person, right, that you are right. So as I say, avoid this type of expressions and go for the ones that demonstrate security and affirmation, okay?
Okay.
Fantastic. There you are. We're ready, I think. So let's use the rest of the class for practicing, and the rest of our classes tomorrow and the other days, we're just gonna practice, okay? And of course, receive some feedback, something that we could improve, etc. So, what am I gonna do? I sent you, right, this website last time, and we're gonna use it in order to practice together this topic, okay? So let's see what we find here. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the bottom, okay, of the statements, so that when you are practicing by yourself, you don't repeat the topics, okay? So remember that in our classes, we're going to be practicing from the bottom. That is to say, starting with the last question. So when you practice by yourself, start from the first question, so that you're not going to repeat the topics that we are already practicing right now in class, okay? So I'm starting here from the question number 30. There are more than 30, by the way. It's 30 of the third group, I think. So as I said, you should start for the first question of the first group. And just in case, we are starting right now with the last question of the last group, so that, as I say, when you practice by yourself using this material, you're not going to repeat the topics, okay? Fantastic. So let's practice, okay? So as you can see here, you have the first topic for this practice. Here, I'm gonna paste it for you. It says people should no longer be allowed to own pets like dogs and cats. Here it says cars is a mistake. I'm gonna correct it. It's not cars, it's cats, of course, because cars are not animals. Do you think that this is a good idea? Give reasons and details to support your argument. Okay, so as you can see, the question is basically asking for your opinion on the topic of legal possession of animals. Should it be legal? Should it be allowed, permitted for people to still have animals like dogs or cats? Is that fine? What do you think? Right, that is the question. So let us enable the chronometer. There we have it. And that's it. Okay, dear Shirley. So I'm gonna give you 15 seconds to prepare your response. And by the way, I wanted to say something here. Let's say, imagine that, by the way, bring a piece of paper or a notebook near you, like this one, okay? And something that you should do before starting to respond is that in the 15 seconds you're gonna have for preparing your response, take your blank sheet of paper, okay, like this one, and you should do something like this. Let me show you. I'm gonna return here to my presentations. Here. So imagine this is your blank sheet of paper, okay? On your sheet of paper, what you should do before starting every single response is to write down the structure that I gave you. Which structure? This one. Write it down on your paper in blank. But make sure that you leave after every single sentence or phrase some blank space for you to fill it later. Okay, so try to give yourself some space. Leave for you some space, separating every single part of the structure. Why? Because when you listen and receive the topic, in this case, the question, you are just gonna fill in those blank spaces what you're going to respond. In that manner, you're going to be able to read somehow this paper when you are responding, in order for you not to be completely improvising your response and saying whatever comes to your mind at that point. So as I say, make this exercise, okay? Do this exercise, excuse me. Write down on your paper what you're gonna say specifically. Of course, not entirely. It's gonna be impossible to write down entirely what you're gonna say in 15 seconds, but the main arguments, more or less what your illustration is gonna be, try to write it down, as I say, leaving these spaces for you, but writing down the titles of the structures there, and then filling them with the remaining content you are going to add to the response, okay? Is that fine? Is that clear?
Okay, yeah.
Yes, it's fine? All right.
Sorry, you can repeat that, please.
Oh, yes, tell me. I mean, as I told you, like, this is your structure, right? I mean, of course, in this case, it's not the structure. But as I say, imagine this is the structure to begin with in the reading passage. This isn't a structure for all their questions, okay? But in this case, you should write down on your paper, what should you write? You should write, in this case, with regard to the topic, right? Instead of writing this, you should write with regard to the topic, right? And leave this space here. Notice that I wrote this sentence and I left this space that is in blank, right? So after you write on your paper the first sentence you're gonna say, that is with regard to the topic, leave this blank space for you. Why are you leaving this blank space? Because, as I say, you are writing down your structure so that when you listen or you read the topic you're going to be discussing in the response, you just feel this. Lo vas a llenar, este espacio blanco, con la información que vas a incluir en la respuesta, right? So this is basically, you are here drawing for you the structure, no more than that, okay? And this is going to help you for you to be prepared and to know exactly what you're going to say at every single step. instead of improvising your response. Okay, so as I say, write down, for example, in this case, with regard to the topic, you write down that sentence, you leave some blank space for you to write down on that blank space your response later, and you continue with the structure. You write down here, for example, it would be because of the following reasons. Instead of writing on the other hand, here you will write because of the following reasons, right? And you leave for use these marks, right? First argument, second argument, right? And that's it. Is that clearer now?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, fantastic. There you are. So this is simply a strategy for you to help yourself and to simplify your response. Because if you make it alone and improvising without a help, as this paper is going to represent to you, it's very difficult. Okay, but if you have this paper prepared with your structure there so that you can read it when you don't know what to say, because sometimes you're going to have blackouts, well, you just read and you remember, right? Fantastic. Let us respond there. So please, let us read this one more time. It says, people should no longer be allowed to own pets like dogs and cats. Do you think this is a good idea? Give reasons and details to support your arguments. Okay, so please, dear Shirley, start preparing your response. Okay, you're going to have 15 seconds preparing your response now. There you are. Okay, Shirley. So now, please, let us go with this first example. Okay, start delivering your response now.
Okay. With regard to the topic, I believe that the people can show big the lower kick the peg and cat dog and cat because for the fear argument I can illustrate that. So for example, they permit that you can for some physical activities because you can go to the park and walk with them every day. And another example is you don't feeling alone in that time. And so do you need a company for the dog and cat?
Okay, thank you very much, dear Shirley. Okay, it was a very good response for being the first one. Very good. So for example, what I would recommend you is, again, please do this exercise. Okay, write this down on your paper. Write it down, because I noticed that you were doubting what step you were following at every single time. So
I
write it
just
down on
the
your paper.
yeah, I don't remember the point. 2
Yes.
point. Yeah, that I got it. Yeah.
No. Yes, and that's exactly the reason why I recommend you, right? That because I knew for experience that it's super difficult when you are responding to remember what step you are, let's say, taking at every single time. So when you have the paper and you read it, okay, so you know that to this point I'm gonna say this, and then I move on to this, and then to this, and then to this, right? So you are always following a particular order of things. So write it down. Tell me when you have finished to copy it on your paper, and then we're going to start with the second example. Okay.
Okay.
All right, you got it.
Yep. I have a question for when you mention for the fear argument in illustration, that is for example, illustration that is similar example, that's right?
Yes,
But
exactly.
so do you need begin the sentence for the this is important because that's, or you can go directly for the example?
No, you can go directly to exemplify. You could say something when you finish your argument, for example, as the ones you gave, right? It is good for them because it allows them to make sport activities, for example, right? Or as an illustration or as an instance, right? And then you start with the illustration.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Fantastic. Let's go then to the second one. Okay. So let's see the second topic. It's gonna be this one. Okay, it's this one. Okay. I'm gonna paste it to the chat box so that you can read it as well. It says, do you think that this is a good, excuse me, do you think that it is a good idea to save about 5% of your salary each month? I repeat, do you think that it is a good idea to save about 5% of your salary each month? Give reasons and details to support your arguments. Okay, so that is the question. Please start preparing your response now. There you are. So now that you have completed your preparation, please start responding to the question now.
Okay. With regard to the topic, I think that's most important that you need say the 5% of your salary. Because of the following reason, the fair argument in illustration is because what do you need in your future? What probably do you need a home? Or so second argument that is for because do you want in the future to travel, and probably or do you need for our say for the family and your children or for education?
Very good. Thank you very much, dear Shirley. Fantastic. So my recommendation for this particular response you gave right now is that it's not necessary, by the way, to say first argument, right? It could be simply like, first of all, or firstly, so you don't need to specifically say, now I'm going to give my first argument and illustration. Is unnecessary.
Directly for the
Yeah,
sentence.
directly. What you did, yes,
Okay.
exactly. What you need to say is, well, first of all, or first reason, right? Instead of saying my first argument and illustration is this one, you can say yes, firstly, or to start with, or first of all, and that's it. And then you move on. And when you finish the argument, you continue with the illustration, as I say, as well directly. For example, or as an illustration, or for instance, without saying, now I'm going to give my illustration, right? You don't need to preface your illustration by a sentence like that, like, now I'm going to start with my illustration. It's not necessary. Okay, you can, as I say, actually and directly say, for example, as an illustration, and that's it. All right?
Okay, okay. Thanks.
Fantastic. So we're going to continue with the practices tomorrow. All right? Let's stop here. And as I said, try to practice with the material that I gave you. And we're going to stop always, or we're going to start always from the bottom of the questions. And you, if you're going to practice in your free time, start from the beginning so that we don't collisionate. Okay, fantastic. So let me okay, I'm gonna take your assistance. Please help me, dear Sheila, with the traditional poll. Okay, I will fill, and I'm gonna take your assistance. Do you have any question, any commentary?
No, that's fine.
All right, good. So I'm gonna be seeing you tomorrow morning, right?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic, very good. All right, fantastic. So thank you very much, dear Shirley, for your responses then. I'm gonna be glad to wake up and to have the class with you tomorrow. And so please have a fantastic night, and I see you tomorrow morning, okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. See you.